Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Summer School. Today, we are here with Autumn Jordan, who is the queen of film and just so good at everything she does. She currently has a class inside of Summer School at the membership, and the people literally love it. I feel like it's one of probably the most popular right now. Not that we're ranking them, but everyone absolutely adores this class, and it's packed with so much wisdom. I think it's like literally over an hour long on all things film photography. So I thought I'd have her on the podcast for all of you who listen to chat even more things film photography. And then after this, we are actually recording an exclusive episode for the membership where they actually get to ask her all the questions that they have. So if you want to be a part of that, go ahead and go subscribe to Summer School, the membership. And I can't wait to, connect with all of you. And so, like, Autumn as well, would love to connect with all of you. So I'm going to stop talking now because now I'm rambling and we're going to let Autumn introduce herself. But this episode is just going to be so fun. So definitely stay tuned for all the things. But Autumn, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, what you do, what I mean by the fact that you shoot a lot of film because you're pretty almost full film these days, and just how you got started in all of this.
Absolutely. Summer, thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun being in summer school with everyone, and I'm just so excited to dive into all things film. So let's get a little nerdy. I've been shooting film for about 15 years now. I was super lucky to go to school for film, where I got to be in the darkroom. I got to learn on medium and large formats and format, and of course like 35 millimeter. But I really spent 4 years creating, developing, processing, and printing my own work. So I spent 4 years like literally in the dark, like at all hours. Like everyone would be like, "Where's Autumn?" Like, "Oh, she's in the dark room," or like I'd go straight from like dark room to like party at midnight. It was a really fun 4 years. But after graduating school, I was really gunning for a darkroom job. Like after spending 4 years in the darkroom, I'm like, I'm going to work in a darkroom and just keep doing this thing that brings me joy that I love. And at the time, it was when film was really on the decline.
Hmm.
I was living in Boston, and there were 6 darkrooms at the time, 6 labs, and I reached out to all of them, and all of them were literally like, "No, it's just me working here. Like, we can't bring on another person." And by the time I left Boston in 2018, which was 5 years later, there was only one lab left in the whole city. So I kind of like exited my college career at Bennington at the time that film was really on the downturn. Like stocks that I loved were being discontinued. So I quickly pivoted and started working day jobs that allowed me to afford to keep shooting film. But fast forward a couple years later, and I had a friend reach out and ask me if I could shoot their wedding. And I said, I've never shot a wedding before. And they're like, it's okay. We like your photos. We want you to photograph our wedding.
Hmm.
At the time, for like full transparency, I was like photographing food for like hospitality brands and like hotel rooms and stuff, like nothing that would scream I could shoot a wedding. But they trusted me, and I decided to show up in the way that I know how. So it was just me and my Hasselblad and my little like Canon 35 millimeter camera. And I shot my first 2 weddings I ever did fully on film because it was just what made me feel most comfortable. That
Wow,
was a
that's
couple years
crazy.
ago. It was a lot of trust. Like I look back at those photos now and it's like I think I've grown a lot with like time and experience, but there's still some of my favorites. But since then, I've kind of pivoted into, as you mentioned, more of this hybrid shooting where I like to say I'm film first and I shoot a lot of film, but I also do think that like digital has a role in almost every wedding day
Hmm.
too. So that's my origin story. I hope I gave enough details.
No, yeah, I would love to ask you one question because I knew someone that worked in a darkroom once, and he really struggled with like depression. Did you ever struggle in college? I've always been curious. I'm like, there's no way it's only him. Like, I feel like I know people love
Oh,
film, but man, being stuck in the dark all the time. I mean, how were I'm sure your college years were fun, like you said, but was it also low key challenging? Because I can't imagine I mean, it's literal darkness, you know?
I mean, it was pretty brutal. I mean, I'd say I err on the side of sad regardless. And maybe that's because my formative years spent in the dark, but it definitely at times would be really isolating, especially like some of the work I made in college. I was super lucky where I would have access to like private space for
Mm,
printing because sometimes I would print work that was upwards of 40 inches by 60 inches. And this is like in a dark room, like
mm,
going through developer, fixer, um so like analog, silver gelatin prints. And so there'd be times where I would literally lock myself in a room that was barely larger than the prints I was making. Like, I'm
wow.
printing like 3 feet by 4 feet. The room is probably 4 feet by 6 feet. And I also had to like deassemble the room in order to print on the floor because I couldn't print on the tabletop in the size I needed. So there'd be times where I would lock myself into this room at maybe like 6 p.m. And then I would leave the room at like 6 a.m. and be like walking through the campus, like in a daze, being like, what just happened?
Oh my
And then I would do the
gosh.
same thing the next night and the next night.
Literally wild. I can't even imagine. I think if you work for a lab, especially, like if you work in, I mean, I get most parts of the lab, unless you're working in marketing, I guess. Like, scanning or developing, you're pretty much in the dark. Like, I remember he struggled a
Mm-hmm.
lot. He was like, it's so hard because that's your full time job. Like, that is madness. I know for you, luckily, it was only college, but you wanted to actually end up doing it, which maybe is a good thing. You ended up
Yeah.
moving into the wedding
Yeah.
industry,
I
Um,
know. Now that you say that, I definitely agree.
it's a wild job. Like, shout out to all of our lab workers. Like, that's actually like really intense. Um, I will say Autumn is one of the reasons I switched labs. Not like it's not that I was like discontent with my lab, but she challenged me to do more things with my film and push myself a little more and push the film, quite literally push myself. And I ended up switching from just a lab in LA to Richards, which what has been really fun. I've only visited once, but we're going out tomorrow to drop off the Last Weddings film, so I'll be excited to see the film from that as well. But Autumn, oh my gosh, maybe we should talk about pushing and pulling film a tiny bit. Not that we need to get into it. I feel like that's like a little advanced for maybe a podcast. But while I'm on the subject of it, I had never pushed film because I don't know, it feels kind of basic now that I've done it. Now I did it the last wedding too. But now that I've done it multiple times, it's not complicated. And I don't know why I was so scared of it. I don't know. I think everyone's scared of doing things that are like different, especially when it comes to film, when you're like, I don't know how this is going to turn out until I get it back. You know what I mean? And then you're doing it on someone's wedding day. Like my first time pushing film was like literally on someone's wedding. Like that's kind of scary. But it's actually not complicated at all. I mean, the photos turned out great. Like, why don't you tell everyone in your words, because you'll probably explain it better, what pushing film is, and I can tell everyone why I pushed the film at the wedding I shot. That could be kind of fun.
I love that. I'm so excited we're getting nerdy right
Yes.
off the back. And I'm so excited we're talking about getting outside of our comfort zones. I think film is really a vehicle to challenge us to trust the process, trust our intuition, and also maybe spend some time learning new things. And that it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to like try new things that are scary. It's okay to have to go at things a couple of times. I actually had the same conversation with the owner of my lab today about how like film is something that really pushes us outside ourselves and how it's good that it feels a little scary. But
Mm-hmm.
pushing and pulling film, for anyone who doesn't know, so when you're shooting film, if you have it, all film has an ISO or an ISO range. So that is basically what you're calibrating your camera's ISO at. So it's able to read the available light in an image accurately. But sometimes we find ourselves in situations that might be very dark, or they might be very bright, or it might turn out that we packed the wrong film for the light setting. And in that case, you have options with your film. So let's just say you're using Portra 400. Everyone knows her and loves her, but you find yourself in a really dark room. You have to do this for your whole roll. That's like a good disclaimer. You can't like push and
Yes.
pull certain frames. It's your whole roll. But let's just say you have Portra 400, though that's not my favorite film to push or pull, but we'll just use Portra 400 for, ease. Say Portra 800. That's one I would recommend pushing and pulling. So you're using Portra 800. You're in a dark room. Let's just say it's reception. It's candlelit. you don't have access to flash, and before shooting any photos in your roll, or maybe you shoot one roll and you try to shoot, a single image on the frame, and you go to meter it and it's like flashing with your f-stop at your lowest f-stop available. So even like shooting at 1/30th of a second, you can't even go down to like an aperture of 2.8. At that point, you could be like, okay, it's time to pretend this Portra 800, ISO 800, is ISO 1600 or ISO 3200, because then you're tricking your camera to thinking that there's more light available, essentially, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and well, I feel like also to tell people you can't just be like, nah, I want it to be 1,000. You're doubling what you're at. So if you have Portrait 800,
Exactly.
one more stop would be Portrait 6, not Portrait 6. It'd be 1600 still, obviously,
Yeah.
the Portrait 800 roll. And then you would double again. So you wouldn't just add 800, you would double to 1600 to 3200, and you get it. Then 6400 if you want to push it 3 stops. So all of that to say, I would hate if someone's like, yeah, I'm just going to push my film, and they did it like 1200, and it's like, wait, what? So yeah, 1 stop, 2 stop, 3 stop. We're maybe overcomplicating it. It's really not that hard. Just double your number, and make sure that you write it down. I now like carry a Sharpie with me.
Yes. Yes, you label your roll and you tell your lab, and not all labs push or pull
That
film,
is
so
true.
definitely ask ahead of time. And if not, then bring it to Indy, bring it to Richards, to the Fine Lab, send it to a pro lab, and they can handle pushing and pulling. And pulling is just the opposite. So it's like you only have Portrait 800, but it's super sunny out. You can just say it's 400, write -1 on it, and let your lab know.
And honestly, so what I was going to say is you were like, and maybe you don't have a flash available. So in my scenario, I do have a flash and I could have shot flash, but it was a wedding where all of it was inside of the same venue and the lighting was going to stay pretty consistent the whole day, except for during reception, probably go a little darker. But in general, it was almost too dark to shoot ambient, so no flash at any point of the day, even with Portrait 800 in, even with an ISO, I'm not ISO, even with an aperture of like, I think mine goes down to like 2.8, so pretty low for film. Even with all those factors, I would have probably had to even use flash during like the ceremony. And I just feel like there's certain scenarios you don't want to use flash on. During a party on film, during the reception, that's fun, it's fine, it's a vibe. But during a ceremony, I do not want to use flash on my film camera. I just feel like it's not the aesthetic. It's also not a good experience for the clients and the guest. So that was the scenario I was in. And Autumn was like, hey, I got you. Go get Cinestill 800. Literally drove to a camera store, even though I literally traveled and flew for the wedding. So I hit the camera store like twice while we were there because it was a 3-day wedding. So it was chaotic. But went to the camera store, got Cinestill. So I not only challenged myself to use a different brand, but a different stock and pushed it. And I actually think we ended up pushing something to 6400, but I think that was one of the black and whites that was not Cinestill. But
Delta 3200.
yes, we ended up pushing that to 64, which was fun, except for I think Jake forgot a couple times and ended up using flash, and flash at 6400 was a little I don't know, not perfect, but yeah, we pushed the Cinestill 800 to 3200 and we were able to shoot the ceremony with no flash, and they actually look great. I like the tones. It's kind of edgy, it's kind of fun. And then even with reception, now knowing that I can do this and that it will look good, and that I'm comfortable doing it, because I think I was so scared just to try something different. I was very comfortable with doing the same thing every single wedding and not really pushing myself to try anything with film. And honestly, I feel like I've been shooting for like 3 years at weddings now, and I have never really ventured outside of my comfort zone because I'm a creature of habit, and doing things like different normally scare me. But now that I'm comfortable with it, I'm like, I'm doing this every wedding. Because even the beginning of reception, I think that's another time where pushing your film and getting ambient candle lit before the dancing gets rowdy, to me, that to me feels more like the wedding. I think one thing I've reflected recently is even a reception needs flash. I want to, even if I have to go to ISO 6400, like on digital, even if I have to like crank my ISO, I would rather get at least an hour of like a party ambient than on Flash because Flash is not how it felt in the moment that you were there. Does that make sense? And so same with film, I'm like, hey, now that I can push this to 3200, add a tiny video light, I can shoot almost any reception, whether it be at least dinner and details or it be part of dancing. I can at least shoot part of that ambient, which to me truly feels more like how the people experienced it. You know, it feels more natural to the day. Like even the wedding we just shot, there was like no lighting. So it was one of those where I'm also hoping my film photos are in focus because it was one of the darkest weddings I've ever shot. There's a disco ball and we were in the desert off grid. So it was a vibe. But when it came to lighting, it was definitely harder, but we ended up pushing a roll or two for the beginning of like dances, toast, things that to me would feel better looking more natural to how it looked in real life. And then yeah, flash when the party started happening, when people are jumping around, like that's cool. That's like a good look. It feels kind of probably a little more like how it felt to be there. You know, you're dancing, but yeah, I'm stoked. I'm gonna like push a roll or two with every wedding. You know, during that time frame of post ceremony, maybe into first dances. I feel like that's for me where I would be most excited. But anyways, for context, the Seattle wedding that I was talking to you guys about, I think I probably pushed almost everything because I mean it was dark and um it looks so good. I just like it so much more. I'm so excited. But I don't know if you have anything to say on everything I just said, but I totally just rambled about this. But basically, I'm very excited. And if all of you listening don't push your film, in my opinion, you should at least push it for some like reception vibes. I have another 35 millimeter camera that I'll put something in and maybe not push it, maybe use flash, you know, have something different or safer or just a different look. But at least one of the cameras, I think I'm definitely going to push for that time period. But yeah.
I'm so proud of you, Summer. I was so like excited. I feel like I was like, virtually like not holding your hand. You didn't need your hand held, but I was like so proud as you were like sending me photos from the film store and I'm like, do it, get Cinestill 800T, get Delta 3200. Like even just playing around on those is like a big jump and leap of faith. So I was just so proud, and I can't wait to see the photos from the Seattle wedding.
I wonder what your opinion is on what I said. Like, to me, that period post ceremony into reception where it's still dark enough that if you're shooting at ISO 800, you probably can't nail it. That's like, to me, like the ideal time frame to push your film. Get those candlelit like
Yeah.
dinner shots, those detail photos, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love that moment where you were talking about making photos that feel like the experience. How, of course, these like glowy, creamy, dreamy flash photos are stunning on a wedding day, but that unless you're like on a crazy, like professionally lit wedding floor or indoor ceremony or dance floor or indoor ceremony, like that's not how the day looks. And while those photos are so fun, I do love, like, in the spirit of being a documentary photographer, having photographs that reflect like how the day really felt. And for me, some of the moments I really gravitate towards where I'm really pushing my film, no pun intended, to its limits is like, especially during speeches or something, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to take away from what, my couple's favorite people are saying about them. And I feel like you mentioned about ceremonies, flash can just be really distracting at times too. And like in those moments that deserve like the respect and everyone being captivated, I love just leaning into the limits of my camera and the limits of film. And I think everyone too should just go into shooting film knowing that film has a lot more latitude than we think. So even if you're like, oh my gosh, I think I like underexposed all of that, or I, overexposed all of it, underexposed all of it. Like film has a lot of latitude, and working with a really good lab too can also help in some situations. I mean, given expose your film properly, but also trust the process.
And sometimes mistakes are fun. At the
Mm-hmm.
Seattle wedding specifically, we were shooting the sparkler exit, which also fun because I pushed the film even with a sparkler exit. We threw a video light on my film camera and we were able to shoot it without flash, even with an exit, which was fun to try and do. But on one of the other film cameras, I did have to use flash, and the flash didn't reload in time. Good old film flashes, they only reload so fast. And so I accidentally took a photo without the flash firing. And honestly, it's a vibe. It's like this kind of motion blur kind of photo with them like kind of kissing. And I'm like, I might literally post that. Like, it's kind of sick. Would I have done it on purpose? Probably not. Maybe now I would. I have no idea. But even then, the photo looks great. It doesn't look like I like messed up an exposure or something. It just looks more like a motion blur, maybe something I meant to do artistically that totally was not intentional. But, your film can, obviously be pushed to a lot of limits considering even that photo turned out like, and I was planning to shoot it with flash and the flash was on it. It just literally didn't fire. And it's honestly sick. Like, those accidents are some of the coolest things in a lot of ways on wedding days.
Summer, was that photo taken on your Contax G2?
I think it was. I think it was.
That is one of my favorite cameras to run into mistakes or like gentle user errors on, as long as it's not a focusing error. I know exactly what you're talking about, where the flash doesn't recycle on that camera always as quickly as I want, or at least my Contax flash that I have on it. Sometimes it's really fast to recycle, sometimes not. Depends on batteries.
Mm-hmm.
Change your batteries before every wedding.
Yes.
But some of my favorite photos, including some of the photos that I presented in my course in summer school, are some happy accidents from the Context G2.
Is the black and white blurry bridal one?
Yes,
yes,
yes, yes,
yes, yes. So yeah, I would say the exit photo is giving a similar vibe. Yeah, it looks dope. So maybe I can share it with you after this. Maybe I can share it with I don't know where I would put it to where people that listen to the podcast can find it. Anyways, you guys just need to join summer school and watch her class. That way you can at least see her black and white photo that we're talking about.
Oh, drop it in the analog channel.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's like, man, for everyone listening that is not a part of summer school, there's different spaces, and we have an analog talks like space for all things film, because I just felt like we had a good influx of people interested in film. So everyone has their own spot where they can talk, send questions in, chat with other people about, analog film photography. Whatever you want to say in there is up to any member that they want to talk about. So super fun. And for anyone listening, if there's any other spaces you want, if you join, we can create any community spaces. So it's a blast inside of summer school. But man, outside of pushing and pulling film, maybe we chat. Maybe this turns into an episode where we talk about the things that Autumn convinced me to change or do. I would love to briefly, we don't have to talk about it long, but since you already mentioned pro labs and how some labs might not push or pull your film, maybe some mom and pops, they're just like, hey, I don't do that. We're not that specialty. My lab I was going to, maybe they would have. I actually don't know. I don't think they would have handled push or pulled film. Maybe they would have. I didn't even actually end up asking, but I just knew that it wasn't the kind of lab where I wanted to do a custom experience like that. So anyways, I decided to finally pull the plug and try out Richards, and they've been incredible. If you've listened to the podcast recently, I think I've talked about them in the episode with Miles Whitboyer. It was basically like an ad. I was like, I love them. It was like the day after I got back from dropping my film off with them. But there are a lot of differences. I had not been to a more pro lab because I have had good experiences with more local labs in different places I've lived. And we are newer to LA, and I don't love mailing film. I know that you have to, so maybe we talk about that a little bit. But I have never had to mail film because I have had great labs near me, and I have had a lot that have given me really consistent results that I really enjoyed. But I visited Richards, and little things that even though I know I should do and I didn't, even with the last wedding, but maybe we chat a little bit about the difference of pro versus maybe your local lab. With Richards, and I don't know if it's the same with Indy, I'm sure it is. There's things that they do. So my lab, I get the photos back and like they are all many different angles, many different upside down, sideways, who knows what. And they're just going to send everything I drop off, just send it. So it's not going to be necessarily in any order. It's just going to be sent over. Maybe it'll be in folders of which rolls were which. Maybe it'll be all in one folder. Who really knows? I'm getting the photos, but the experience of how I get them might not necessarily be very specific. With Richards, and I'm sure Indy as well, with a more pro lab, what I didn't know is that you can label your rolls, and I'm sure this is Indy and Richards, but I can label them and they will flip and rotate every image to where when it's sent over to me, that's not something I have to do. And honestly, like flipping and cropping, because I get borders with my local lab, but they're not like the full borders that like people want. It's just the small border. I don't necessarily I don't send that to wedding clients. It can be a vibe sometimes, but that's not what I'm sending when I'm delivering like 400 or 500 film photos. So I not only have to rotate everything when I use my local lab, but I also have to crop everything. Whereas Richards is going to rotate and make sure everything's in order if I take the time to number my rolls on a wedding day, which I did not do at the last wedding, but that's okay. But yeah, maybe we should talk about that a little bit. You might know more differences between pro labs and your local lab. Your local lab might function like a pro lab. That could be cool. From what I've experienced at Richards, I've never had a lab function like them that I've ever been to. So it has been a really cool experience to, I like to think of it kind of like in the wedding industry, maybe how your experience with a luxury photographer should be different than your experience with a more locally based average market photographer. Not that either one is worse or better. You might get a average market photographer that has the best experience in the world, but normally you'll have a more catered custom experience with the luxury wedding space. So that's kind of how I felt about going to Richards versus going to my local lab. Also, there's obviously a price difference, kind of like with the wedding industry. But yeah,
Absolutely.
tell us your thoughts on pro versus local labs.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'm so honored to talk about this because as a photographer that shoots primarily on film, I actually consider my relationship with my lab extremely collaborative. Like, I could not be producing the work that I am putting into my clients' hands without the full trust and support and relationship that I have with my lab.
Hmm.
So, I go to Indie Film Lab, or I work with Indie Film Lab. I wish I could go there. I guess I didn't preface in my intro that I live in the sticks. I live in the Hudson Valley, which is an hour and a half north of New York City. So I'm not quite close enough where I could use one of the amazing options in the city. And around me, there are a couple of local labs, but they are just using flatbed scanners to scan. And then they also don't have the capacity to develop all of the films that I shoot. I do some large format work, and then I also like shooting on slide film. So I've been working with Indie Film Lab for my professional work for 4 years, 5 years now at this point, and have been sending personal work there even longer. They're based down in Birmingham, Alabama. And I guess when it comes to shipping film, if you're worried, just choose overnight shipping and put an air tag in there. And labs are super used. I think on your episode last week, Summer, you were talking about how Richard's used to all the air tags coming in and the little beeps.
Yes.
So that said, labs are used to it, especially if you're using what I would consider a pro lab, which would be Richard, Indy, the Find Lab, which is based out in Utah. There's a couple others, I mean, many others, but essentially the experience is a professional level lab experience. So you're not just dropping off your film and it has one option. You are presented with a multitude of options, everything from how you would like your film processed. So, is it at box speed? Is it pushed? Is it pulled? Are there any other special notes? And then something very special about working with the Pro Lab is how you have the ability to have preferences when it comes to scanning and color correcting. So Indie Film Lab has the option to use a Frontier or Noritsu scanner to scan your work. That said, you get to choose per roll. So like I've had film orders where I'm like, I want these film stocks scanned on Frontier and I want these film stocks scanned on Noritsu. That said, I'm a Noritsu girly, but Frontier has its place. I think especially with those West Coast photographers who have a lot less green in their world, and people who shoot a lot of black and white. I've heard great things about the Frontier there. So you have the option on which scanner is being used. And these are professional level scanners where in Indie Films Lab's case, they have like a dedicated person for like the Noritsu scanner and a dedicated person for the Frontier scanner because there's so many nuances.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it just comes to scanning, there's actually like a lot of choices the scanning technician gets to make. So something that I've done with Indie, and I know that Summer, you've done this with Richard, is I've sent over a like spec sheet that I kind of rework on each year. I should start working on this year's, where I'm like, you know, greens are really important to me. I want my greens to look like this. I want my highlights to be like glowy, creamy. And for black and white, I want it to be really crisp. I want some warmth in the shadows. I don't want my highlights like crazy, crazy, crazy bright. I want a little softness in them. That said, you definitely need to shoot your film and expose your film in a way to like give your lab technicians the most latitude when working with your film. So like shoot at box speed, or if you don't, let them know and meter properly. But after it goes through the hands of the scanners, then when you're working with a professional lab like Richard or Indy, you actually have a color corrector going in and working on your scans. For me, that's the most wonderful woman in the world, April. We're all about seasonal and month people here.
No, literally.
So April goes through and she rotates every image. Everything is also put through the lab in order because I label my film in terms of roll 1, 2, 3, 4. Given I'm balancing between like 4 to 6 film cameras on a wedding day, but it's all relative. So they're going through, they're rotating everything, they're cropping everything in a clean way. And then April's also very in tune. We've kind of developed this visual language of what I want my work to look like. So she's very in tune in terms of like, okay, Autumn's like greens look like this, her blues look like this. And she's also making decisions across the entire film order to make everything cohesive, which is really special and really wild. Like even over the summer, I had a film order where I did shoot a lot of portrait, but I also shot a lot of cinesto, which does have a lot of pink red in it. And she was able to pull those colors back in a way that it was really cohesive with all the Kodak portrait work still, which was really incredible and something that comes from working with someone who really takes their time and cares. And that's something that's super special about working with a professional lab. And then also like the file sizes you get are like huge and juicy and amazing. Like I think my film scans range anywhere from like 30 megabytes or 35 megabytes for like stuff on 35 millimeter. I think upwards of 60 megabytes for like anything on 120. And then my 4x5 scans are like 200 megabytes.
Girl, how are you?
So they're huge.
You're probably blowing through hard drives. I mean, you're not shooting a lot of,
Oh,
you're not shooting
literally.
a million like large format photos, but still probably blowing through hard drive space.
I probably go through one hard drive per 4 weddings. But I'm using like 1 terabyte hard drives, which I know it sounds like a lot of space. Once you copy everything over and you have RAWs versus like your finished work.
Yeah.
And I also work on Super 8. So those files, because it's like scanned, moving film, those are huge. Those are gigabytes worth of space. So I run out of space really fast on hard drives.
Honestly, I've never done the math of how many weddings per hard drives, but last year we had 4 hard drives and they were 2 terabytes and we only probably shot 20 to 25 weddings. So
exactly.
that's a lot. That is a lot of storage.
I should probably switch to the 2 terabyte ones just so I can maybe get like 6 to 8 weddings
get a little further
on a hard drive.
Yeah. We had 4 hard drives last year that were 2 terabytes, so 8 terabytes worth, and we only shot probably 20 to 25 weddings. So that's a lot. But we are also obviously storing podcast episodes, storing summer school stuff, the podcast has been going for a year, so storing lots of audio, stuff like that. I mean, we're just storing lots of things over here. I feel like photography is obviously me, but at the same time, there's so much more to my business than shooting these days, which is crazy. But yeah, so fun. Pro labs. I am so stoked. I would say the price difference. I don't actually know off the top of my head the price difference. I do know that Richards has a second version of their lab where, they're using all the same high quality equipment, but they're not going to, custom color your images and they're not going to rotate them. And they actually do. So they do have a more approachable, they say more like beginner friendly option. And it has a whole different name. It's called, I think, like House of 35, something like that. And it's meant for more just like amateur photographers, not in a bad way, in like you're not shooting professionally. And, maybe people just shooting a roll on vacation, a roll of their friends, stuff like that, at a cheaper price point. But I actually wish I knew the difference in the price point, because every time someone's like, oh, how much, just wondering like cost of, I should know these things, like how much it costs me to develop film. I just drop stuff off and I'm like, well, this is just a business. Like, this is a business expense. Whatever it costs is whatever it costs. If it's only like a $2 difference per roll, I would much rather it done by people that are going to pay that much more attention to it.
I would say like pro labs from my experience, I think it's usually like it also depends too if you're just processing your film or processing and scanning because that is higher
Mm-hmm.
price point and then also color versus black and white work as well has a different price, but I find between like the local lab options I have and indie film lab it's like a $4 to $6 difference depending on which film stock I'm using and what I'm having done. And then pushing and pulling film always costs a little bit more. At Indie, it's $1 per stop, $1 or $2. I think it's just one. But it's a minimal difference. But that said, when you're shooting like 30 or 40 rolls of film on a wedding day, it can add up. But also the amount of time those
Yeah.
pro scans save me and also knowing that like my film is going to be returned to me in pristine condition, like no spills or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that or dust on it. To me it's really worth it to at this point for me for my clients to provide them with the very best option.
Oh, 100%. I went to a lab in LA when I first got here that actually was referred to me and other people by some of the people at Kodak. They were like a newer lab in the LA area, and I had a bad experience. And I'm not going to say the name because I don't like talking poorly. But when I brought it up to Richards, they actually knew why, and it was because even though it was a lab, I didn't ask how they were scanning. I didn't really care to think about it. You know what I mean? I was just like, oh, like they come highly recommended. Let's do it. Pros and cons to this. I'm pretty sure from what Richards told me, this lab was doing a more just like camera scanning method. And with that and it not being fed through just the different ways of scanning, I had so many hairs on my scans. And I was like, also the colors were just so whack.
Oh
And
no.
the guy at Richards was like telling me, he's like, oh yeah, I know those dudes. Like that is definitely probably why, is because you're way more likely to have dust, hairs, things get in it. And if they weren't paying attention, like they probably just sent it off, you know? And then the colors as well. I was like, these colors were like atrocious. Just not at all how I assumed portrait could and should look. And again, with the scanning method, it's a lot different to bring colors out with that method, and the colors were just so whack. And I was like, man, like a lab that came so highly recommended, I actually gave them a second chance and I took film there again. And man, it was just another level of weird the second time too. I was like, man, I've never had to actually get things rescanned, but this is a scenario where I probably need to. But it was so enlightening knowing that at Richards with their scanners, there's like no chance of dust in general, and even if there was, they would check it. But having the hairs, I'm like, I should never have to. I personally don't think anyone shooting film should have to like Photoshop hairs out of their scans.
No.
Especially at, it's not like it was like a cheap price point, like a 2 to 4, maybe $6 difference per roll. If I'm gonna get hairs back, dude, I'll pay the $4. You know?
Yeah. No, it's like, props to anyone self scanning at home, like me with like my pet cats. No way.
Yeah. No, no. And yeah, yeah. So, anyways, my one bad experience. That is like my only bad experience with a lab. And I think it traumatized me some to the point that like I stopped getting my film cut in case I ever needed to get it rescanned, because a lot of labs do charge a good bit extra to rescan if it's been cut. But yeah, on that side of things, actually, do you get your film sent back to you cut or uncut? I'm
So,
curious.
yeah, I get my films sent back to me two different ways. So, for the most part, I do get my film sent back to me uncut. And then, actually, when I get it back in my hands, I go ahead and it's usually towards the end of my season, or if I have like, a little spare time during one of the months where I have like less weddings, then I'll try and get on top of it. But I will go and sleeve it myself
Hmm.
because I do actually love to return my negatives to my couples. I know a lot of photographers want to hold on to their entire archive, and I also support and love that too. But I really believe my couple's wedding photos are the beginning of their archive as a family, and I want them to have that.
That's so cute.
And it's so sweet. It's like even though like people might not know what to do with them, like I always give a list of places they can like send negatives to make prints from. Like if it turned out one of the scans they loved, and I label their images in their gallery different if they're film or digital, so they can easily figure out where in the negatives that particular image is. That's like a film scan. And then I give them a whole list of labs they can send stuff to actually get silver gelatin prints or
Mm.
color C prints of their wedding negatives. But that said, so sometimes it comes to me uncut. Indie Film Labs started rolling out digital contact sheets.
Mhm.
It was kind of mid-year last year, so I've toyed around with that a bit too. So they actually create a digital contact sheet of all of your film the same way it looks as though you're getting it from a dark room, like where you sleeve it and then you're doing just like a print of that.
Do you
So
want to
that comes
briefly
back to me.
explain a contact sheet in very layman's terms for anyone listening that is like, hey, I have no idea what she's talking about right now, just in case for anyone
Yeah,
listening? Because I'm like, I
absolutely.
feel like you kind of explained it, but I also would love if you explain it a little more in case someone listening is like, what did she just say? You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I always, I feel really lucky. I've been doing this for a while. So I try to remember that some people are at the very beginning of their journey. That's how my Film 101 class was framed in summer school.
Yes.
So a contact sheet is on a roll of film if you're shooting 35 millimeters. So that's like the sweet little canister film that you might be used to putting into a point and shoot, or a SLR like a Canon AE1 or a Nikon F2, that has 36 images on it, 36 opportunities to press the shutter and take a photograph. A contact sheet is after you've taken all the photographs, you've had your lab develop the film, it's been dried. A contact sheet is literally a physical sheet of film negatives laid out in order that the roll was shot, because in addition to there being a image on the film, there's actually like, it'll say the film type on the film, and it'll also say the number image that was taken. Like each frame is numbered, so there's a lot of information on a film negative, not just an image,
Mm-hmm.
which is why, like, online you're used to seeing those notches, or even when you're using certain like digital products, they might have like something that you can put your photos in, like a film frame, and you see it has a number on it and it might say like the app's name on it. That's modeled after what a negative looks like. So 36 negatives makes a 35 millimeter contact sheet. For medium format, it is anywhere from 10 to 16. Just trying to think, if you're shooting 6:9, I think you get 8 images,
Yeah, I
but you
think
might
it's
just
only
get
8.
7. And then 4:5, a contact sheet is usually 4:5 photographs. And all of that fits on like an 8:11 sheet of paper. So just to like put into context how much like size, like how large each negative is.
So fun. Oh, wait, what were you saying about them, though? You're saying Indy sends you digital ones, and then I deterred you.
Oh, Oh yeah, no, no, no. So they send the digital contact sheet, but they've made the digital contact sheet, I believe, off of cutting everything and putting it into sleeves. So I also get my negatives pre-sleeved from them sometimes as well,
Hmm.
which that's the step I take before sending to the client. So it's fun to play around with both. It's fun to ask your lab about both, and regardless, it's really good to think about not keeping your film just rolled up forever. It's good to eventually get it flat.
And store it somehow. And don't be like me
Exactly.
and kind of just have piles of it in your closet because
Oh,
I,
well, you can send all that to the Film
I
Hound
know.
and they can archive it all for you.
I honestly need to because when we first moved here with trying so many different labs, I was like, I don't want to get anything cut, especially after my first experience. So instead,
Mhm.
now I have like no storage because it's virtually impossible to store uncut film. Like it's just, box. I mean, at least when some labs package it nicely, it comes in a tiny box, but sometimes it's just a
Yeah.
hot mess in like a bag. Yeah,
Oh
it's
no.
not the best. It's not the best. Autumn, don't come to my house ever. I'm kidding. We're gonna figure this out this year. But yeah, I am gonna have one of mine cut for a future client because I am giving them the negatives. My hardest
I love
part
that.
though is for anyone that wants to give their client negatives is one of the hardest things for me sometimes, and I experienced this with this client's engagement session, so that's why I'm using it as an example. I'm always down to use myself as a good or bad example. Um, I'm the film that I shoot on multiple cameras, maybe like sometimes 4, maybe 5. And I just shot an engagement session recently, and gosh darn it, the sun was setting. We had been together for a while. I did not feel the need to shoot 20 more photos just for the sake of finishing the role. But I also, with delivering it to them, with giving them the negatives, I was hopeful of just finishing all the film on them. With weddings, I've gotten really good at like finishing all of my film by the time the wedding ends. But on engagement sessions, I feel like sometimes I struggle to actually shoot out enough photos. I don't know. I don't know if you ever run into that issue. I think that was actually one of my biggest adjustments though when it came to shooting them on weddings was finishing the roles, honestly, because I
Mhm.
don't want to wait for maybe some time in my personal life or just waste the rest of the role. And maybe if people are doing high volume, maybe not as much of a concern. You have a wedding the next weekend. But if I'm only doing maybe 2 weddings a month or maybe less or maybe a couple more, I don't want to wait that extra week and a half just to send off the film just so I could finish a
Mhm.
role. I want to finish everything with the same client. But man, I don't know. With engagement sessions, it is a lot harder for me. It's probably just gonna need to become habit. Like I'm gonna have to get used to it, like with weddings. But with weddings, I feel like I have it on a roll of like when I finish what roles, what my routine is, and kind of how the end of the night looks to where I make sure I finish each camera before I leave. But engagement sessions, man, I don't know. I am not good at finishing the roles before they end. I don't know if you've struggled with that, but probably, maybe. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I think that's so normal, but I feel like that's when you get to like go home or go back to like your hotel
True.
and like really play and get like weird with your role because like your couple doesn't have to see the rest of the film. Just cut it
Yeah.
and not even give them that. But I feel like when I have extra shots, that's either when I'm like trying something a little bit more like risky because it's like, those frames are just personal,
Yes.
or I'm photographing stuff that I feel like my friends at Indie Film Lab want to see. They recently were like,
Take
take more photos of inside your house.
a
And I was
photo of
like,
your cat.
okay. Exactly. Oh, they see a lot of that. I basically finished all my roles on Earl the cat.
So fun. Yeah, I feel like every film photographer, especially ones that fly, have that like classic, oh no, I have to finish this roll before I go through the airport
Yeah.
so I can get it hand checked. And there's so many random photos. Like, I think the last travel wedding we did, I forgot about one of the cameras and just like right outside security, I was like, okay, let's just finish this. Who wants a photo inside the airport? Um, but yeah, I think we all have those classic, like, I finished a roll and I'm looking over here for anyone watching YouTube because I finished it in this room. But I finished a roll when I was pregnant just because we had to finish one. And I think there was maybe like 6 shots left. And some of my favorite pregnancy photos were those photos. And it was just, I was like, man, I got to take this to the lab. Let's just finish this roll. And we just literally took a photo with like the white wall in our room. And some of them I think might be on our website right now too, because we took a couple with a podcast mic. But the
I
maternity
love
ones were cute.
that.
They're on my Instagram. Look for me in like a black jumpsuit with a white background. That is in my house, literally just finishing out a roll from a wedding.
I know those photos. I
Yep.
also wanted to like jump in and say too, for anyone who's nervous about flying with film, I've actually so there'll be times where I didn't finish shooting a roll, or maybe like I actually only took like one or two photos on the roll. Like it was important to reload it and keep going. You can ask to also have your whole camera hand checked. Like
I've done
I've
that
never done it with more than one camera because I'm already like rolling through the airport with like
a
dozens
million
and dozens
things.
of rolls of film. But I've had no issues asking them to hand check a like 35 millimeter camera or a medium format camera. Like they grumble about it, but I always look for the nicest, like the friendliest looking
Like, I'm gonna go
TSA
there.
agent. Exactly. Like not someone who is like clearly lost their patience for the day.
Yeah,
And
the
I've just waited before too. I've had them tell me no, and I'll be like, okay, I'll just wait here. I'm not going through with my film.
oh, causing a scene.
A little bit, but it works because eventually they're like, oh my God, we need to like,
Get her
get
through.
this lady out of here. I've also found too, like traveling and like having your website ready and open, or even traveling with some prints of your work. I've done that when traveling internationally to convey, like, I'm a professional photographer, like, this is my work, like, it can't go through the x ray. The only time where I really got stumped was at a couple museums in Paris,
Hmm.
but no issues like flying in or out of Paris.
I've gotten told very intensely no going through the London Heathrow airport.
I have heard that's a hard no.
It's a hard no. I was like, please, there's wedding photos, and they're like, we do not care. And but they did say anything over 800 they would hand check because it will get messed up. And so I took that as 800 and above, and luckily I actually shot a lot of portrait 800 with that wedding. It was pretty gloomy. It was kind of more like Seattle P&W vibes, Scotland and kind of dreary. So, you know, but yeah, no, they did not care. It was actually like they were very mean about it. It was kind of it was I was a little I was like, oh man. Even the people in the line, they were like, yeah, check her hand. And if they're gonna go through the trouble of hand checking all of the 800 and above, like why not take like the 4 rolls of 400? Like, come on, you know, like
Exactly. I think
why?
there's
Mm.
yeah, they're so used to it. And some people just know and they get like not excited, but they're like happy to see someone still shooting film. Some people are annoyed by it. Another thing you can do, I haven't heard of anyone having luck with those x-ray bags, but I have a bag that
Just in
says do
case,
not.
maybe.
Yeah, I've heard. I don't know. I haven't heard anyone getting like super luck being allowed to use those, but I did buy like a whole series of bags that say "Do not scan" in like the 20 most popular languages used worldwide, and it really helped me when like moving through Panama last winter because I unfortunately don't speak any Spanish, and I was able to like rely on my film bag to communicate what I needed, and it actually really helped in this scenario when I was at this like very like remote airport.
That's actually genius. I need to go buy one of these.
I'll
I was
send
gonna
you a
say
link.
even the like the bags that prevent it from getting damaged and stuff. Like you could, I wish I would have had one in London technically since I had to send it through. The film came back fine, so they were right that it wasn't gonna probably cause an issue. But I don't think it's a risk you necessarily want to take. But in hindsight, it was fine. I've also had a lot of hand checks on my G2 because, bad at finishing rolls. But, if there's like 5 photos, I'll just finish it before I board. But because especially now with a baby, I'm checking milk, the hand checking film. The last time we went through the airport, also the milk got flagged, and I've actually never experienced something getting flagged for like explosive material or something like that. And we were there for maybe, oh man, I don't know, it felt like forever. Luckily Georgia was sleeping through it, but I had to like take them, we had to open the bottles, which they were like, I know this is uncomfortable. I was like, honestly, I don't care that much. Some moms would have been very uncomfortable, but we had to open all the milk. I had to like, he let me do it so that way he wasn't touching it, which was nice of him. But I had to like take droplets of each bottle and put it on different pieces of paper, and then he would put some sort of chemical or dye on it, and then he'd like shine like a
Hmm.
light through it and stuff. And I was like, whoa, like we had a whole little scientist come out for the milk. So not only did I check like 40 rolls of film, I also had like lots of milk because it was a 3-day wedding. So we had a lot going on our way back, and it got flagged. And I've never had, my whole history of flying, I've never had them like, I guess why would you have them test something like that unless I guess you're flying with like medical liquids? I have no idea. I mean, maybe things can. Have you ever had anything get flagged like that where they literally brought out like a scientist kit?
So that happens with films sometimes. Like it depends on the airport. So some places they just do like that gentle swab, but some it like becomes a little bit more intense. Like somebody comes out from like I don't know if they're coming out from
Yeah,
like
I'm
the
like, where are you
Department of
coming
Homeland
from?
Security room or something, but I've definitely had that in some places where like they make me wait because someone like special has to come and do it. But it is like get to the airport early, always,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's film or milk or both. Anything that like can't just go through the scanner, like go early because like if
Yeah,
you have patience, then they tend to be more patient with you.
and I've never had anyone be rude about film. I mean, I think I had someone maybe one roll their eyes with like the 20 to 40 rolls last time. It's like anywhere up to like 15. I feel like they're like, yeah, cool, cool, and then it's like over that they're like, good gracious. But
Yes,
you probably fly with a lot. I can't imagine how
like
many.
a crazy amount. Like internationally too. That's where I get like always a little bit more nervous as well. Um, but I just always like give myself usually an extra hour at the airport because I just need them to like take their time
Mm.
going through all my film.
Ooh, you know what?
Mhm.
I would love to, as we wrap up, which we're not done yet, people keep listening, but I would love to ask Autumn because this is a mishmash of all things film and Autumn's journey, but I feel like Autumn has cool opinions on what cameras she likes. So I would love to hear if you had a ride or die, like your top 5 film cameras.
Okay,
I
phew.
would love for you to give us like your top lineup that you
Oh my
love. If
gosh.
you feel like you have time, maybe why you like them, but also you could
Yeah.
just tell us your top 5 that you like, which I'm sure narrowing it to 5 will be hard. If you need to give more, you can.
No, I think top five is perfect because I actually had this beautiful engagement session out in Montauk, New York this weekend with one of my amazing couples. It was so cool. I like did an overnight with them. So we got to like really spend the
Ooh,
weekend in their
fun.
favorite place. It's like my new thing. I'm like, I think like photos of the mundane are just as important as the wedding
Mhm.
day. So I'm trying to like professional third wheel with my couples. Not, just in a let me take your photo away, but it was so fun. We got to go to like all their favorite places all weekend, share 3 meals together, and it was very relaxed. There was like no rush to the day. It was really just a perfect day. But I think the cameras I packed are my favorite cameras. This is going to
Mm.
be very easy. So the love of my life, which I have some of them right behind
Dude,
me.
show
The
and
love of
tell.
my show and tell. Okay, so the love of my life is my Hasselblad. I've had her since I was 18 or 19 years old. It's
Fun.
a medium format camera. It shoots in a 6x6 square. This is like if I could sorry to all my other cameras in the room, but if I could only choose one camera for the rest of my life, it would be the Hasselblad. I love it because one, the camera itself just feels so good in my hands. It's kind of like it's not super petite, but it's not huge. Like it just has this really nice hand feel when you're in it. I also love that I have multiple backs for it. So on a wedding day, I can have one loaded with black and white and one loaded with color. And I can actually switch between the two backs throughout the day. Like I don't have to shoot through a whole back before putting one in, unlike a lot of the like auto cameras like a Pentax or even like a Mamiya. Actually, a Mamiya 645, you can swap your backs too. So anyways, like some of the electronic ones you really can't switch midway, but the Hasselblad to me just takes these like really like glowy, creamy photographs, and I think there's something really precious about the square, but also because it's medium format, you can crop in so you don't have to have every single one of your photos be a square if you don't want it to be. But the Hasselblad's my number one. It really enables me to make my very best work. My second desert island camera would be my Leica M6, which I always feel a little flashy saying that, but it's a camera I really worked towards for a long time. It's a camera that there's a lot of work I admire out there, and very similar to the Hasselblad, minus the light meter. The M6 is all mechanical, so I feel really confident using it on a wedding day because if I run into any issues, it's not an electronic issue, and most issues on that camera are fixable, which is really why I gravitate towards mechanical gear like the Hasselblad or the Leica M6. And then I love how many lens options there are with the M6. I love the way it interacts with flash. I love how easy it is to zone focus on there, and it also just feels really good in my hands. I recently went to France for 3 weeks, and it was the only camera I brought with,
Wow.
and I love all the work I made on it. My third desert island camera would be my Plaubel Machina 6.7. That's probably my most niche camera I have
It's so
too.
fun.
It's super fun. It has like a bellows system, even though it's a medium format camera. It has one fixed lens on it, and it shoots in a 6x7 format.
Do
So
you
I only
have
get
that one
10.
reachable?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Show them. Show
Um, I
show
have all I have,
show
I
my
have all my cameras.
show my 200 YouTube subscribers. Come on,
Hello,
everyone,
summer
head on to YouTube.
subscribers. So the Pablo Machina, it is, even though it's like a big guy, it's technically the smallest 6x7 camera that exists.
Hmm.
And you only get 10 photos on each roll in this camera, but they're all gorgeous. Like they're like the amount of detail, the crispness. So this one has the one big lens and
So
it comes out
cute.
like that. So this one's a great travel camera. I was recently in British Columbia for a couple of weeks and I brought this camera and the M6 with me. My fourth desert island camera, or like, my favorites, my ride or die, it would be my Intrepid Camera Co 4x5. So this camera shoots 4x5 sheet film. This is the size of the negative, everybody. It's 4 inches by 5 inches, which is why it's called 4x5. I have to go like underneath the dark cloth when I'm using this. I have to focus really slowly and use a handheld light meter. This camera, I have another 4x5 that I love. That's a monorail, but that one's like 12 pounds and takes a long time to set up. This folds so small, I can pack this camera and all the accessories I need for it in a little tote bag,
Wow.
which is crazy. And I brought that one out to my engagement session this past weekend. And it's really special because it's like the same type of film like your great grandparents would have had their wedding photos taken on. So for me, it's for like the very special moments. But I also love like I have a thing for like whipping it out when people are at the kitchen table or just like on the sofa. Like I really love taking this formal camera and making it informal. And then, oh my gosh, I can only choose one more film camera. This might be a controversial opinion, and I feel like I'm gravely offending some incredible cameras on my shelf. Oh, I should post a gear list in summer school. But I'm going to say the Olympus Stylus. It is
Ooh.
a point and shoot I got for $80. I have the one that zooms up to 70. I love it. It shocks me every time. I take some of my favorite photos on it, and it's so small. It is always on me. Like I am photographing like nights out with my friends way more than often than I used to be, I mean, and photographing way more time at home and with the cats. And then on wedding days, it's like so discreet and easy. And I find myself being able to like jump into quick moments with that. And it's great for party photos. But that camera is like kind of not a sleeper because so many people have it, but I think a sleeper when you're thinking about building like a pro kit or like if you're really wanting your first film camera, like you can get an Olympus stylus for under $100 or under $200. Can I have an honorable mention? Is that allowed?
Yeah.
Okay, honorable mention for desert island cameras goes to the Holga. I was just thinking of affordable cameras. If you want to just start shooting film, I think Holgas are like $35
Yeah.
or something, $50, and it's like an amazing way to start shooting film because like your only options are is this person, a family, or a mountain, and is it sunny or shady? And you can pop a flash on it, and some have a flash already inside of it. It's such a fun camera.
I'd say go
It's
with
so
the one without a
unpredictable.
flash, though. It's cheaper, and the flat one with the flash, in my opinion, the flash kind of sucks.
I agree. I agree. I would do the Sans Flash one and just use your own flash, or even just buy like a $10 flash off of like the internet.
Hmm.
But the Holga, like for anyone who's never shot film, that's also like just a really fun camera to play around with.
When you first said honorable mention, I was like you want me to honor you and somehow, and I was like, yeah, like go for it. Like Autumn is the best. I did not know we meant an honorable mention in the lineup of our top 5. So number 6 goes to the honorable, amazing Holga, but I loved your opinion on the Olympus stylus because I actually, when we had in the analog tech talk section of the Summer School subscription, guys, if this doesn't make sense what I'm saying, because it's not going to, you need to just join and go check out the community. It's really cool. Someone mentioned, hey, does anyone have a rec for a small point and shoot, maybe small camera that would just be easy to like take with them places, maybe put in a pocket, you know? And I was like, dude, probably the Olympus stylus. I literally had one and I regret giving it away, but we gave it to Jake's cousin for her birthday. She turned like 18, or maybe it was Christmas. I don't
Oh,
remember.
that's
And she's
perfect.
just like a hip young kid, and I was like, this, she will love this. So I literally gave it to her, and now I'm like, man, I kind of miss it. I need to buy another one.
Yes.
Because yeah, the size is one of the most appealing to me. It is truly a pocket camera. There are pocket cameras, and it is truly a pocket camera, and it still takes great photos to be a pocket camera. Do you have any thoughts on, technically, isn't the Miju 2 also great and also basically the same size?
So I cannot speak for that camera. I've never shot on it, but I have a feeling like a lot of those point and shoots are like the ones that are like from the 90s and early 2000s. Like they literally fit in your pocket. It is the
Mm-hmm.
only camera I own that fits in my pocket.
I also think everyone, maybe we end on this note, everyone should own a cheaper, which for a lot of people, the stylus may be outside of their budget. So maybe you're going Canon Sure Shot, but a cheaper point and shoot. Also, for the sake, which I'm saying this also to myself because now I need to buy one, but for the sake of also at a wedding, what I did sometimes when I did have cheaper options was I would literally pass them to people. Like there'd be a fun groomsman, and I'd be like, "Hey, do you want to go take some photos with this?" And he would like run around and get funny photos with his friends, and that's such a fun thing to do and so candid for them that one of their guests that knows everyone, it just feels different, when the guest is taking it. And on a point and shoot, it's just like a disposable. All they got to do is click. What a fun little thing to be able to add into the gallery is like, okay, I just tossed it to some groomsmen that just like ran around and got some like goofy pics. But I'm not about to toss my contacts to a random groomsman. It's just too expensive and a little risky, even if it's the T2, like even if it's a point and shoot.
Yeah.
Probably not going to give it to a guest to run around with. But yeah, something smaller, easier to use, maybe cheaper that you don't mind letting someone borrow. I loved doing that back when I did have a couple cheaper options that I would bring to weddings.
I agree. Like, I think the best camera you can have on you on a wedding day is the one that's just easy to use and accessible. And that's like very much what's driven me to my own hybrid workflow is thinking about like what tool is the best at any given moment. And I think a lot about like people and space and comfort. And yes, while these huge DSLRs or mirrorless cameras with a long lens, whatever, all the big flash can make a beautiful photo, they're not always like what provides the most intimacy on a wedding day. So I think it's really important to think about the tools that you're using. So whether that's a point and shoot because it fits in your pocket and because it's discreet, or like using a Hasselblad or a camera that like makes people like smile and ask questions. Like people are always excited
Mm-hmm.
to ask about this camera, whether it's a parent or a grandparent or someone my own age. Like I think there's something about film cameras in all styles that really delights people on a wedding day and breaks down barriers in a way different than digital gear can.
I've actually found a lot of people know what the Holga is. Like a lot of
Yeah,
people, the Holga at a wedding, people are like, "Oh, is that a Holga?" Like it. I'm wondering if I'm too young to know that it went through a phase that I
I
maybe
think
wasn't
you might
aware
be.
of. Because same with
Because
the lomography camera, when I posted the review, everyone was like, "Oh my god, I had that camera when I was like, in high school." But they're talking like 2009, and I was like barely 9 years old in 2009. So I obviously didn't. I wasn't using that for my MySpace photos. So I'm wondering, Holga must have had a face just like lomography did.
So not to age myself, but
I aged
back
myself in a young
in
way.
well, you're young. When I was in college, which was 2010 to 2014, you could go to Urban Outfitters and buy a Holga, and they had Holgas in every color. Let's just say
Yes.
my greatest regret is selling my like coral red pink Holga. It's not the hot pink you can still find sometimes. They had like blue, they had yellow, they had clear, they had a glow in the dark
I
Holga.
love
So
that.
I think Urban Outfitters plus like just MySpace, also like when Flickr was really like the online photo community. Holga has like very cool roots in history and it's always been accessible. It's always been known as this like mighty plastic camera.
That was what I noticed literally at the wedding I just shot. Was not only did people know, well, I've noticed the Holga thing for a while because I've been shooting with it for a while, but it was my first time bringing the fisheye to a wedding, and someone was like, "Oh my god, is that lomography? I had that like in high school," and I was like, "Oh, that's cute," or like middle school. I had a couple people bring
Yeah.
that up, and they're like, "Oh my god, I had that camera. Like this reminds me of." When I was a kid, and I was like, oh, this is kind of fun, that I'm using this camera that like reminds them of their past.
Yeah, well, I think that's like also the beautiful thing and goes back to the resurgence of film is there was this time, like I mentioned in 2014 to like 2018, where like film was on the decline and like not as popular and labs were closing down and film stocks are being discontinued. And now because more folks are getting interested in film, there's this like renaissance happening with film and like not only are there cool cameras to shoot on like Holga and like the fisheye, but even the 4x5 camera, the Intrepid Camera Co. camera that I showed off. That's a newer ish company that started making these cameras out of like CNC machines, like laser cutting them and 3D printing them. So
Hmm.
there's like new cameras that are happening and new film stocks that are happening, and it's like the most amazing thing to see enough interest being in film that new stuff is being developed.
I love it. Okay, now to actually end us, I want to ask if there's any camera that, if budget was not a factor, you would have right now, or you might literally have your favorite cameras. But if you had unlimited resources, what does Autumn Jordan want right now?
Oh my gosh.
You might have all
I
of your
love
wants, you know?
no, I love all my cameras, but one camera came to mind, or like two cameras, because I would love to have an RZ67,
Hmm.
but the Mamiya 6, that is like my white whale. Like they exist, but they're pricey, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
also nervous because I don't know how easy it is to fix them when they break, which that's my main consideration when I purchase cameras now, is like, are these repairable?
Hmm.
Because I'm putting a lot of miles on my cameras, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But if I could have any camera, it would be the Mamiya 6, which is another medium format rangefinder. So not unsimilar to the Pablo Machina, but it just has those beautiful lenses that the Mamiyas have, and is also compact to some
Mm-hmm.
extent. So that's my dream camera right now, and probably the one thing that I am craving the most. But I also told myself that 2025 would be a no new camera year,
Hmm.
but I think I'm about to pull the like literal trigger on
She's
buying an
already
8 by
over it.
10 camera.
Month three. Month
Yeah,
three.
I know. I think I just need an 8 by 10 camera because I used to shoot on them in school, and it's been a long time, and large format's treating me well. So we'll see. That's like a
I
big leap
I would
because
love to
that
see that for
film,
you.
it's crazy because that film, it's like the camera is pricey, but then like each sheet of film is like $10 per like one sheet of film, and then processing I think is upwards of $50 for like one sheet, which is what one sheet is one photo. So you're
Yeah,
like
that's a
at least
lot.
$50 per one photo you're taking. So like better be good.
I just I struggle so much already with, man, how sometimes the time, just like having the time on a
Mm-hmm.
wedding day to get the shots, the non-documentary shots, and it not happening in a way that pulls away from the day. You know what I mean? Sometimes when shooting film,
Absolutely.
it adds another level of, this is slower. I'm not just blowing through like, 5 minutes of sunset pics and moving on. You setting up a large format camera on a wedding day, I know you have an assistant, and she goes into all of this inside of the summer school thing. I'm pretty sure you talk about it. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, I can't even imagine. So I can't wait to see you do it though, and I do believe you're probably gonna buy the camera. So I'm stoked. I can't wait to stay tuned. But
Me too. It's gonna be so good.
if you guys loved this episode and hearing us basically just nerd out and rant, we actually have to go start our recess episode. So, Summer School, the podcast, is obviously not going anywhere, but Summer School, the membership, the community program and platform for education and resources and community for photographers, that is all inside of an amazing little app and software program. You can join $39.99 a month, and we will be launching new classes every month, as well as what I'm about to tell all of you about, because this will be the first one. Autumn is the first one. We will have something called Recess, which is basically an exclusive version of Summer School, the podcast. And so, for all of the members inside of Summer School, they can submit questions to the people that I have on the podcast so that they can get the things that they actually want answered. So, if you are listening and you loved what we had to say, go ahead and subscribe, and Autumn's episode will be in there because it literally airs April 1st, and all of you will be listening to this after that. So go ahead and subscribe, and you'll be able to catch Autumn's Recess episode, which dives into some pretty deep questions. So we are going to run and record that. But for all of you listening, hit the description or the show notes to find more about Autumn. Go check out her Instagram and subscribe to Summer School to listen to her Film 101 class, because it is very in depth, so informative, and it's just a blast to have her a part of the program. So, thank you so much, Autumn, and we got to go record that episode.
Yeah.
Bye,
Thank you so much for having
everyone.
me.